updates are very important, and there's a lot of news out there that basically a lot of you just don't see. You rely on your Facebook, your Twitter. Well, that's crazy. But also you're not home for the local news. And remember, the local news starts at 4:30 in the morning here, and there's only fools like me that are up at 3 o'clock. So I see some of that news, but a lot of you just don't get the news. All you get is what goes on in the household of the wife or the girlfriend or what have you says, oh, did you see so-and-so? And you go to Twitter. Ian, as you know, we had a kind of a breaking story on South Australia. I know you know it as well as I do. Just give us a brief of what actually has happened there a few days ago. What occurred?
Well, they thought they found a new strain of COVID. The strain seemed to be a lot stronger and quicker to infect people than the current strain that most of us have seen previously. And there's just some news out actually today saying that this all could have just been a big lie from a pizza worker. There's so much misinformation out there right now.
Yeah, in actual fact, it was a guy who said he went out to a pizza shop to purchase a pizza, and it could have been avoided that they shut down. If he told the truth of that he did work shifts at the shop, so he actually didn't go and buy one. So I imagine he was serving up pizza saying, you want pepperoni and sausage, and would you like some COVID on that as well? But he went there, he said, to buy a pizza. He didn't admit that he worked there. And that lie has caused a lot of issues. And the Prime Minister, Stephen Marshall, says he's fuming at the understatement. But you and I know, Ian, that humans tell lies, don't they?
Unfortunately, yes. Well, to make them sound better, to make them sound more informed than what they are. And unfortunately, the people that get the time on TV, hence why we're doing this, are the people that are forcing misinformation down our throats. We gather information by what we see, read, and hear. And unfortunately, a lot of it is given to us even from false information that they get. Say a guy that was getting, Sage guy, who was getting information from Wikipedia.
Oh, I tell you what I'd like to do. Before we go to the Wikipedia crap, if I may put it that way, why don't we just roll the video of the news conference in South Australia, and then when that's over, we'll come back and we'll discuss that. So let's just roll the video.
Cases, as I said, the positive cases have been linked, and that's a phenomenal effort. And it means that we are very early at the beginning of this, and we have a very, very short window of opportunity to close it down and stamp it out in our community. This particular strain has had certain characteristics. It has a very, very short incubation period. That means when somebody gets exposed, it's taking 24 hours or even less for that person to become infectious to others. And the other characteristic of the cases we've seen so far is they've had minimal symptoms and sometimes no symptoms, but have been able to pass it on to other people. We also know, because of that characteristic, that what we call a generation is only about 3 days. And a generation is when one case is passing it on to the next level. And then that level, so that if they pass it on to 2 people, they'll pass it on to the next lot of people. And that's your 3rd generation. At the moment in South Australia, we have done all the contact tracing up to the 4th generation. But the 5th generation is out there in our community, and at the moment we are contact tracing to get onto that 5th generation, and that's the call out for the Woodville Pizza Bar. So the reason for going for this 6-day period of really significant restrictions is that's 2 generations. As I said, we're up to the 5th, and then we'll be getting up to the 6th. We don't have any time to wait. If I just thought about this all day and then told the Police Commission, the Premier, to tonight, we would already be 12 hours behind. So we really do need to act fast on this.
So you just mentioned, I mean, you folks have now seen what happened in South Australia, and she was adamant that if she didn't shut it down now, this new strain, and we'll be talking about strains in a moment, was going to absolutely inundate the whole of the situation in South Australia. But you mentioned Wikipedia. Now, sage, well, which I know is a great thing, rosemary, thyme, and sage, but this is the what is it? They're the safety people that are looking after COVID over in Britain. Now, Ian, where did they get their information from, and who the heck were they?
To be honest, they got the information from Wikipedia, but if you go on Wikipedia, you'll see a lot of information from a lot of different people, and a lot of it's impossible to tell what's right and what's wrong on that. But like most people, or ill-informed people, you read the first line and, oh, that has to be the truth. And, you know, it beggars belief that people can make such large, impactful decisions on us by making ill-informed information, by gathering ill-informed information. It's absolutely incredible what's going on.
Well, when we go into what they decided that literally, how can I put it, that the whole situation was basically, these are young folks that are aides to politicians who are trying to make it look good and trying to get a permanent job, and they just don't seem to do their investigation the correct way at all. I mean, we have the same situations over here, that governors of the states have their aides and their advisors, and they really don't know what they're doing. They're pulling information that they believe. They don't know how to find the correct information, which of course is causing a lot of issues. Another thing that really gets me, Ian, if I may, is that, and I'm turning here to go to pull something up that really does concern me, and that is the strains, the actual strains of the COVID. And as you and I know, we've had what we call the D strain, D614, but now we're seeing the D614G, and now the South Australia deal is going into another strain. So as this is replicating itself, it is changing and being a chameleon. And naturally, the concern I have, and so do a lot of our doctors that we talk to on a daily basis, is that what are we testing for today? Are we still testing for D? Because 99% of all of these now are of the 614G, and a few others as well that are now coming to the surface. So where do you think we're testing? Are we getting so many false positives, negatives, or whatever? What are your feelings on that?
I think we're still testing for the original strain. I don't know, and neither does anybody else, what the difference is. Well, they know the makeup of the differences in the different strains, but they don't know what the differences are to us and how well the original tests for the different strains. It's the same, you talk about testing, it's the same as the vaccine. We could all go out and get our vaccines done, only to find out that, a bit like the flu, we need to keep it up every single month. But is the one we're going to get now going to be enough to help reduce, eradicate, completely disperse the original COVID-19? Or is COVID-19 just going to keep growing and manifesting itself into something else that we can't keep up with?
Well, let me just give you this, and this is what I was looking for information-wise. You and I read daily. The team sends us information, and really it gets to the point where you just wonder, what is going to be the next story? And by the way, the situation we have right now is pure and simple on the new strains. and I'll refer to a phone call and notes that we took during that. And it says that patients infected with D614G variant are associated with upper respiratory tract viral loads that's seen with the ancestral strain, but not altered the disease severity. What they're concerned about is it is more virulent and is stronger, but we don't know, is it going to kill more, which we don't think it will, but it's making people far sicker for longer. And then the next word with longer is the residual effects that are going down the pipeline for further medical issues, heart, lungs, and the other most important one is up here.
Yeah, that's what they're seeing more and more of, especially with what they're terming as long COVID, are issues within the brain. It's scary, and I still think people a number of people still think this is a joke and it doesn't exist. And I'm sorry to say, but it does, and it does exist, and it is affecting people. And I'm scared for the future at the moment. I really am, because there are people that believe how bad this is, and there are people that think it doesn't exist. And until we all realize that, this is a guy in a high street with a machine gun, and we've got to really start looking after ourselves and realizing that this is real. It's not going away today, tomorrow, with a vaccine, without a vaccine. It's something that we're going to have to find a proper fix for, which there isn't at the moment.
Well, let's do this. On October the 19th, a professor out of Australia did a super interview. He does make some references to politics as well, but that's okay. What I like about the nuts and bolts about what he says is that we are moving exceedingly fast, and they're going to show issues down the road. Like we start getting billions of people getting the vaccine. We may have some little strain that suddenly happens 8 months, 12 months down the road that is a killer, that can actually turn it around and make you weaker than ever. We don't know that, but I believe what he had to say, I think, was vitally important. And I'd like to go to the videotape if we could, please.
I think it's a real danger when there's such a pressure to produce something so quickly. So the big concern here is because the benefits of producing something so quickly when there's such a great need, we might focus on that, the overall benefit, rather than thinking about some of the considerations to do with safety. We might move away from what we have as our standard procedures for making sure that the drugs and vaccines that we use are as safe as they possibly can be.
The risk is we could be creating a worse outcome by putting a vaccine out there if trials are being rushed, because obviously some side effects of a possible vaccine could take years to come out.
It is possible that some side effects might take a while to come out, but the other big issue and consequence here is because we're talking about such large numbers of people that are potentially going to receive the vaccination. So if you have 8 or 9 billion people and you are going to try and vaccinate as many of them as possible, even an extremely rare side effect might only emerge over a large amount of time. So I think we need to always be cautious, to be aware of this as a potential problem, and do everything that we possibly can to make sure that we've reduced the potential risks from using the vaccination as much as we possibly can. I personally believe that a vaccination is really important, and hopefully we can produce one with minimal, perhaps even very, very rare side effects, and that's going to be extremely beneficial. But we always need to keep an eye on the potential downsides rather than being blinded by the potential benefits that might come from a vaccine.
And blinded by the potential benefits, certainly because scientists are under not just economic pressure because the politicians want to save their economies, but also political pressure. President Trump, for example, has been accusing the Food and Drug Administration of delaying a vaccine till after the election. I don't know if there's any truth in that, but there's certainly political and economic pressure on scientists to come up with a vaccine as soon as possible. And that is a very big risk.
Absolutely. So we should have these studies performed according to the appropriate medical criteria, looking at both safety and efficacy. And then as we move into the real world, we're interested in effectiveness, because we need to be careful about making inferences from what works in the first kind of studies that are done, the first kind of smaller trials, to making inferences about what happens in the real world. In relation to the political pressure, the US is the best example of this, because obviously it's in President Trump's interest to get a vaccine, or at least something that he can present as being a successful vaccine before the election, as a means of helping him with his bid for re-election.
Professor, the $64,000 question. You know what's coming. When do you think a vaccine is likely?
So that's a really good question. You hear lots of different things. I think some of the trials suggest that things are going well. We might have some kind of evidence of an effective vaccine maybe sometime next year. But of course, then what's really important is when that vaccine becomes available for those who want to actually take it up. And that in turn might take a number of months. Again, if you think about the whole of the world's population, if that's your target, you want to perhaps achieve 80% vaccination rates, it's going to take a long time before people are protected from a vaccine. So even the best possible scenario of a vaccine sometime next year, it might actually be perhaps 2 years before people really have access to the vaccination all across the world. So a lot of groups in different nations at the moment are doing a lot of work on how we should prioritize vaccines, which groups should be the priority groups, because it's going to be extremely unlikely that for a long time, everybody that wants a vaccine will actually be able to get one.
Okay, with his comments, as you can see, he believes that we can get a vaccine, but Ian, we're talking that the general public are not going to see a vaccine until summer of next year.
At least.
Yes.
Absolutely, at least. And I think a lot of people would agree with that statement. But will that vaccine that we might get in the summer of next year, will it be any good against the COVID that will be there in the summer of next year?
Correct. Bear in mind, you mentioned the influenza, and John Forbes, who's our local pharmacist here in Urbandale, who's become a very dear friend, as he puts it, right now with the flu vaccine, you're dealing with a vaccine that really has only got a 40% chance of protecting you, because we're working on last year's. I want to go to another subject, if I may. You and I know that the Lancet is the most incredible medical defined organization that brings you a lot of news regarding medicines. And
it's one of many.
Yes,
one of many.
It is. But the Lancet I like because of the way their writers are. And they're now talking very seriously about COVID-19 affecting mental health, and the coronavirus pandemic may be stressful for people, we know that, and fear and anxiety about this new disease and what could happen can be totally overwhelming and causing strong emotions in adults and in children. Now,
I'm sorry, it's a fair point, but I think it's a little bit bigger than that. And I don't think it's just about COVID. It's about what happens because of COVID. And the kids can't go to school, the parents can't go to work, and every day they're not at work, they're losing money. The government can just keep printing money, but that's got to be paid back at some point. So we're all going to have our taxes put up. It's a complete round robin. And the mental issues, I think, are not just chemical ones, but they're physical ones. And it's causing a lot of heartache and a lot of undue pressure and strain on working families.
Well, you know, the public health actions, such as, you know, we talk about social distancing, washing our hands, and wearing masks, which, as you and I know, we can talk on masks in a moment. But it makes people feel isolated and of course, lonely. And that can increase the stress and the anxiety. But however, these actions are necessary to reduce the spread of COVID-19. We have to have those in place. But coping with the stress in a healthy way will make you, us, the people you care about and your community stronger if we cohesively work together. We know there's a risk, and we know that risk is real, and these conspiratorial nut jobs, I'm getting sick and tired of. But we've got risk, and the next R is responsibility. And at the moment, the worst thing about responsibility is people don't believe that they have to do this on a daily basis. And you've got to have respect for this viral enemy that we have. And by being responsible, we can get back to it. It's a terrorist.
It's an unknown quantity. You don't know when you're going to catch it, whether you will catch it, but if you do catch it, it's going to hurt.
Yeah,
majority of the time.
And again, on the mental health side, if we can just stay there for a moment, the biggest concern I'm seeing is, and I don't know about you, but in the UK, I know you've got the same issues as we have, but literally we don't have the finances and we don't have the doctors to handle this. There was a particular case that I was made aware of a couple of days ago where a particular person was really under a lot of stress. And they came to somebody because they just couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't get an appointment to see somebody. They knew they were in trouble and they didn't want to do, in a sense, the wrong thing. So there was help. Somebody tremendously got them help, but it wasn't what was absolutely necessary. It was like a stopgap. And the problem is somebody said, yeah, we haven't got any counselors, but they can see a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist will prescribe them pills. The pills are not needed. I don't have COVID, by the way. Just been talking a lot. So when we look at these antidepressants,
as long as you know of.
Say that again. I haven't got COVID.
That you know of.
Yeah, well, my temperature's fine. My temperature's fine. Remember, we do our thermal temperatures every day, so we don't have that. But I've been talking so much this morning. But literally, when it comes to the mental health, we don't have the money. We don't have the doctors that are needed. And we've got to do something about it because mental health is breaking down all over the world. I mean,
do you know what? We do have the money. We really do have the money. We just spend it in all the wrong places and on all the wrong things. And I think, especially here in the UK, we're getting sick and tired of our hard-earned taxpayer money being absolutely destroyed and wasted in every conceivable way. And it is just getting worse. It is absolutely getting worse. We had what was it, £12 million or something around that, paid to a Spanish middleman for getting PPE, and that was a government contract. And you just unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable.
Well, it's crazy because the other part of the coin, if you like, the other side is the hospitals themselves. They don't have the staff.
No.
Their staff are getting sick. I mean, 25 states here in half the country over here in the United States, they haven't got staff to be able to do what they need to do. It's absolutely crazy.
But why would you want to be a nurse when you get treated badly? You know, why would you want to be a policeman, an ambulance driver, a fireman when you're treated so badly by your own government?
Well, I agree. And by the way, a very, very good point that we have is that, you know, on a daily basis, on the information we get back and forth all day long regarding the infectiousness of COVID. We now know that the new strains, and specifically the Australian, where we're looking at most infections happen in 3 to 5 days, it's happening in 24 hours. That's why they shut down. But if we're looking at the studies now, they're highlighting the fact that we do need to isolate if you are not feeling well. And again, that's responsibility and respect and literally knowing that you can be a risk. Because come on, folks, you know, everybody over here, you don't celebrate it over in Britain, but we've got Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday of next week. And people want to get together and celebrate and what have you. I don't. I'm going to be responsible. Plus the fact I don't want Aunt Mary bringing that blasted glass dish of green stuff that the spoon never moves at all, and she just takes it home. I think she brings it every year. Nobody eats it. But the point is that we don't want to make people sick. I don't want to spread it to other people who then take it home, because there are parents, there are grandparents, like for instance, your mother is now living with you, and thank God she is, because you're able to look after her, because you don't want her getting sick. I mean, we've got to be responsible.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I didn't have anything to add to that.
That's right. I know I said it all. Okay.
It was kind of a closing statement.
Yeah, I know. The other thing I want to come to, if I may, and something I know a lot about because of law enforcement, is delirium. We are noticing, and I had a conversation with a very dear friend of mine, John Wiseman, regarding his either brother-in-law, sister-in-law in their 80s. And although they got COVID and it was they didn't expect him to come out of hospital. But the worst part, he's now better. They're both better. But it's this, that they are not cognizant of what's going on. They are literally, they've got issues. And we are now seeing a lot more of this. You know, delirium is where you're not cognizant of what is happening.
Yeah, then you're likely to get misdiagnosed with Alzheimer's or something like that, and get given the medication to fight something that you don't have. You know, it's difficult to understand what the differences actually are. And when you're looking at people in the age range of 78 to 84, they're at their most vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, you think of this, more than 1/4 of older patients in that study who arrived at those emergency rooms with delirium, 37 of those patients had no typical COVID-19 signs as a fever or shortness of breath. It was pure delirium, which is a confusion, inattention, disorientation, and other cognizant changes. And you're right, it could be diagnosed as anything. But my big thing is hospital. The hospitals are a breeding ground. And we know this, that people that end up in hospital, a lot of people say they never come out. Well, they come out, but they come out in the box.
Well, we also know that especially delirium, nerve damage, can cause strokes. We also know that you can have a stroke and not actually know you've had one.
Right.
That is, that's a different conversation that we've been looking at with our facial recognition for health, and seeing whether there is a change in your facial features when you wake up in the morning. because it can be very, very minor, all the way to complete major ones through to having TIAs, which are lesions on the brain.
Oh, it's crazy, Ian. And one of the things, and the reason we do this on Fridays is kind of that was the week that was, just bring people up to speed on some of the stuff that you didn't see in the newspapers. We are not conspiratorialists. We absolutely work with genuine information. We have a phenomenal team that work literally day and night in getting this information out. And I can assure you, when here in the United States, when my day starts at 3 a.m., which is 9 a.m. for Ian, I've got a lot of information that I go through that has been forwarded to me, because Ian's got that 6-hour start, and also the rest of the team's got a start as well. So we can see a lot of genuine information. But the one thing we got to look at, Thanksgiving's coming. You don't need to go and party. You certainly don't need to go and travel. The one thing we've got to do is we've got to look at in business and in schools, and bear one thing in mind: the education of our children is key. We must have our children back in school. If we can have them back in school using what we call the pods and bubbles regimen, and we as a company know this very well because we put lots of it together and we know how it's handled. We also need frontline protection, and anybody who's using those stupid little guns, please destroy them. They're useless. All they're doing is they're letting COVID come into the building. We know thermal radiometric cameras can do a job, and yet a person doesn't have to check it. We know we can do it properly, and we are doing it properly. But once we get you into the school and what have you, and you're in a pod or a bubble, if they're literally a 10-person table, or it could be a classroom of 30, literally, if somebody comes down with COVID, you've only affecting 30 people to be isolated. It's the same position that you should take in business. It's the same way, because you've got to be responsible. You've got to respect that you could catch it, and we've absolutely got to reduce the risk. So I don't know, on some final points, Ian, if you've got some things for people to think about the weekend.
I'm just reading through the latest figures on percentages of symptoms, and still by 65% other people are still getting fevers, shortness of breath, and lower than that now, which is something that we've been told to look out for, is a cough. But that's only 50%.
Yeah, you mean my little cough I just had?
We really, this time of year, we all get fatigued. Yeah, but it has to be so many coughs per hour and all of that sort of thing. Yeah. But still top of the list is fever. It has to be the first line of defense.
Well, that's what a virus does. I mean, it comes out as a fever and your temperature goes up. By the way, I don't know if you can see these. Fisherman's Friends are my way of always keeping my throat going and getting rid of any coughs at all. And by the way, there's a good movie called Fisherman's Friend as well. In finishing, Ian, your favorite one and my favorite one is these, the mask. Okay, literally these masks, unless you're washing them, they're a complete waste of time. The type of mask you need is one that has got a filter. That's a strange picture, isn't it? Right. And also it's tight it's tight to your face. As you can see, we've got Velcro here that holds it in. But masks are very, very important, and I think we need to do that and make sure. So this weekend, folks, keep safe. Ian, to you and your family, and of course, all next week we'll have everybody doing their Thanksgiving thing. We have our turkey, and we have all of our stuff, and we're just going to be absolutely a week of. And I do have plenty of scotch and wine, so we'll enjoy. But I can assure you, Ian, we're talking today, and tomorrow morning there's going to be yet another story, another concern. Don't you agree?
Yeah, there'll be a new focus, a new lens, and a new news cycle.
You got it. Thank you, sir. Enjoy your weekend. Love and regards to the family, and certainly to your mother. and also to your daughter, who actually did test positive for COVID, but she also tested negative.
She did.
That's another story.
It is.
All right, sir. Well, listen, take care. Appreciate you very much indeed. Thank you.